antidote. There is no antidote. There is no antidote. There is no antidote. There is no antidote.
Hello, everybody. So I know you're excited. I know you're excited because I'm watching the comments right now as you guys are filtering in. Umvelt's being talked about. There's a whole discussion of mantis shrimp happening, and several people saying, Jennifer, for instance, she's like, the whole time I was reading the book, my mind was just blown, and I kept thinking, what? Like, what? This is true. I had the same experience. Several of you have also asked if Darwin is going to have, kind of a refresher on what bees are in the world. If you don't know, Darwin is our mascot. He discovered bees this week and spicy sky raisins. And his face is a little bit swollen, but he's good. He's good. He's still adventurous. He was out today, still exploring, experiencing his own personal umvelt. So I'm really excited because it's such a good book and such a good show. I know, Davey, I know you're excited too.
I am. I'm very excited. It's one of those books where like not even every chapter, every page or two, you're like, ooh, that. Oh, I gotta tell Maggie about that. Oh, I gotta remember that one. Like there's so much in there. It's like going to a stand-up show where at the end of it, you're like, I don't think I can repeat a joke back, but I know they were all great.
They were all good. Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And Peculiars, I got a preview of the comedy sketch tonight by Davey, and I'm telling you, this might be the one. So,
I was sitting on this idea for a while. I actually listened to this book like a month ago. I got ahead in my book.
Oh, you're all there.
I've been sitting on this sketch for a while.
So I see Randy Trent, Rachel Lenz, Susan Ballinger, Leanne, Kristen, Joanne, Lorelei. So many people are here. I'm going to try and keep track. There's going to be a lot of questions, I know, as well as a lot of comments. So please, if you are writing a question for me tonight, if you could just put Q first so I can spot them easily and we can keep track of them, that would be super helpful. And feel free to get typing on those because, as you know, there's a little bit of a lag. So now, without further ado, I think it's time for us to bring on the best writer I can think of for this kind of work. And it's about my favorite kind of writing. So, are you ready? I'm ready. Explosion! It's Ed Young!
Hello!
Welcome!
Hi! This is all very dramatic. Hello! Delighted to be here.
Drama is what we do here, Ed. It keeps it weird. It is. I like Rachel's response is just what? Yes, exactly. We all feel this way. And what's really cool is this is a VIP group, and as Anthro Girl says, our VIPs are all very interesting peculiars. We do have a first question from Leanne. Leanne's going to lead us out. And I actually think it's a good question to start with since we saw her earlier. She says, Ed, you have a bird named after you. How did that come about? Because honestly, that is the question on the tip of all of our, frontal lobes right now.
Right, and I want to clarify that I have like an individual bird named after me, not like a species of bird. There is no like Yong's warbler. No, so I actually, all right. So a long time ago, I wrote about a story. I wrote a story about a study involving a very rare bird called the Chatham Island black robin, and many years later, I reached out to the same woman who did the study on the robin for a completely different story. I had completely forgotten that I interviewed her in the past, and she said, "Oh, hey, it's you. You wrote about my work many years ago." And as a result of that, we named one of the robins on the island Yong after you, which was cool. I know very little about Yong. I think Yong might not be with us anymore because these are small and very short-lived birds, and this was some time ago. But I also know that Yong was mated to another robin named Martini, and I like to think that they had a very nice, happy life together on Chatham Island. So that's the story of my bird.
I like the story of your bird. You know, speaking of martinis, this is actually a nice segue. I often
Brilliant.
lack segues, really.
Yeah.
I usually have no segues into the introduction part of the show, but we do make drinks for the books that happen here. And so, Davey, could you cue up our announcements? I think now's a good time to talk about that. All right. So, first of all, there's a lot of ways to connect at the Peculiar Book Club, and we always put these up, and it's like our Facebook page, and there's Twitter, and there's the Facebook group, which is separate from the Facebook page. If you want to know the difference, the Facebook group is where you get to be weird. The Facebook page is where just I'm weird, pretty much. And we also have a YouTube page. The YouTube is where all of our shows actually live after they've been live, and if you subscribe, you get a little like reminder, which is great. Next slide, Davey. There it is. You can become a VIP. If you're here, you're already a VIP, which is awesome. And you should be getting the Substack. We have a couple new people. I know Nina is here. Nina Kraus is here, and she's a new person. And we've had a couple new people join Exercise. And I also think that if you're not getting if you're here and you're not getting my emails from the VIP thing, you should maybe email me and let me know, because technology is against me most of the time. Next slide, Davey. Yeah, we sell shirts. They're fun. Actually, most of them are fun. Most of them are also really weird, which is kind of our brand. That means next. Cocktail. This is what the segue was really all about. So Yong Martini would have been the perfect name for this drink, but I didn't know about it in time. So we voted on names. One of them was the Kiwi Umvelt, which I thought was pretty good. That was the runner-up.
Nice.
But we ultimately went with a change of perspective with lime. And this drink is kiwi and sapphire gin and lime and honey and soda water. And I didn't have any of the ingredients, so I'm drinking water, which is just sad. But I see Sadie says, it's a couple people. Sadie said she had kiwi in the fridge, but she's using it as a garnish for her GNT. It's okay. We can be fresh and weird. Susan said she made it without the kiwi, but it's still good. So that is the drink that we chose for you. This is your drink for your book, Ed, and there's a mocktail version as well.
I'm honored. It sounds great.
Because of the font, I my brain read it as perspective. I thought it was even punnier than it is. So now I think there should be another version of this drink that has pear involved somehow.
Change of perspective. I like that. Kat, Maven, one of our mavens. We call all of our volunteer help who are awesome and help us get everything done mavens, because it's just a cool word that I happen to like. But this is Maven Kat. Kat is the one who is our mixologist and creates all of our drinks, which are lovely. That is her massive stuffed octopus in the photograph as well. So it's very cool.
Fantastic.
Oh, Kathleen's like, I'm already working on it. She's gonna make that perspective. It's gonna happen. Good. I'm in the water group with Brandy, says Anthro Girl.
I actually wish that I'd known about the cocktail like 3 days ago, because I just moved across the country to California. You can't take any liquor with you on a cross-country move. So on like the day after I arrived, I completely replenished the bar cart and just bought a shit ton of booze and mixers. But like aside from the gin, I have none of the ingredients necessary to make this. So we're going to experiment later with like
okay, that sounds good.
A variant.
You know what? I did the same thing when I moved to Minnesota, and when I got to Minnesota, I was very close. I don't live in Minnesota now. I'm back in Cleveland, where I also restocked the bar. But when I moved to Minnesota, I was close to Wisconsin, and Wisconsin is the cheapest booze in the entire world. I don't really know why that is, but I not only did I do a restock, I thought I should taste everything that I bought, which was a terrible idea. Like the next morning, I woke. Yeah, well, you know, I it was just a little of everything. It's just that there was a lot of things. So the next morning I woke up, and I had, by the way, invited people to this tasting event. And the next morning I woke up and there were all these broken glasses in my sink. And I called my friends and I was like, who broke all the glasses? And apparently when I finished drinking something, I just threw it across the room into my own sink. Wow. But I don't remember that. Anyway, I don't suggest that as being a good idea. Last slide. You don't have to, if you don't care for social media or because Twitter's on fire, etc. Bookclubs.com also has it covered. We, one of our other mavens, Amanda has created bookclubs.com for us. And the lovely thing about that is it sends you reminders. So you don't have to remember uh, all the details of the events just get sent right to you, which is pretty great. And you can avoid Twitter, which is also kind of great. So I think that's it. Except it's not it. It's not it. I always forget the last slide. Go, Davey!
That's okay. One day, Peculiar, she'll remember me. That's right. We do a Peculiar movie club as well. And if you want to check out a movie that kind of meets a theme, I tried, Ed. I tried thinking of them, but your book is so dense and so varied that I was like, what would match? So we were going with the second book from this month, An Evening Hero, and we're pairing it up with the movie Minari. So I haven't watched it yet. Plans to watch it this weekend. Me and Darren are probably going to record on Sunday. He's my podcasting partner who talks movies with me. But yeah, if you've seen the movie or if you want to catch up and listen next week, we're going to be doing the movie Minari. And I'm excited because I hear wonderful things.
Yes, that's a very exciting one. I have to say, I'm not normally a sort of movie person. I'm autistic. Movies are very triggery things, but I don't have to watch them because I just listen to Davey instead. And it's amazing. I learned so much. Really great. So you guys should definitely check it out. Okay, so now that we have handled the drinks part of our day, I wanted to get back to some of these questions because we've already had several starred and I know more are coming. I want to go to Kristen's question. She says, so much of this research has changed since I studied it many years ago. How did it feel to write a book that may have inaccuracies soon? Like, and I totally get that too.
Yeah, I think if you write any science book that has to do with contemporary research, there's always the risk that what you write about could be wrong, and like very quickly wrong. You know, I in my regular news coverage of the Atlantic, I run into this problem all the time. I very regularly write about things that I then have to like write a refutation for like several months later. But I don't see that as a problem, really, right? This is sort of a feature of science, not a bug. That it's a changing pursuit, and what you get at the moment is a snapshot of what we think is true, and it will likely change. And I think there are many ways to address this in a book. Like, firstly, you can cue readers into understanding that by showing how things have changed in the past. Like a lot of An Immense World includes stories in which what we thought about the ways animals sense the world were completely wrong and changed leading up to our modern interpretation. You can talk about uncertainties. You know, I think it's good practice to run towards uncertainty in science writing, to make clear what we think we know, what we think we don't know, you know, limitations for what we know. The entire chapter on magnetoreception, how animals sense the magnetic field of the Earth, is grounded in that. You know, it's a chapter about this incredible sense, but it's also a chapter about the production of knowledge. It's a chapter about how the quest to understand the world is very fraught, and that people can get things wrong, and there can be feuds and conflicts, and it's all influenced by science as this social human endeavor. And then, like, finally, I think the trick is to strike a balance between things that are like themes and ideas that are fairly timeless and universal, and details that might change. You know, are we going to learn tomorrow that umvelts are not in fact a thing and that all animals sense things exactly how we do? No, we're not. Right? And are we going to radically rethink the way that light works, or what smell is used for, or you know, or what touch can do? I don't think so. I think we can actually capture a lot of the fundamentals of how these senses operate. But like the details might change, and that's like trying to give people that sort of solid conceptual foundation is the key. And you know, all the stuff on top of it might topple or might have to be shifted. But you know, I think you can create something where that's not going to be a problem. You know, I'm fully expect that in 5 years parts of this book will be wrong, but I'm okay with that.
Well, and I have to say, so since I do history of science, it doesn't actually get any better there either. Like you think it would. You think, oh well, it's history of science, so obviously
Right.
we'll have all that sorted. But it's completely not. And I find myself constantly going like, no, that's exactly how. No, it's not how it happened. Actually, you uncover
Hmm.
some new source. So I think that's really interesting. I personally. Certainty bothers me more than uncertainty in a lot of ways. I feel
Hmm.
like out there in the world is the minute I see something out there where someone's like, I know for sure, I'm like, oh, red flags,
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's really brilliant. I'm going to move on to the next question, but first, I just want to point out that if you look at our screen right now, it does kind of look like Ed and I are in the same room. Like I've got this
Right. Yeah.
light, but oh, I feel like my hand ought to go right into the. Sorry. Yeah, I mentioned I'm autistic, right? So these things happen. The next question is from Nina, and actually, it's kind of a good one because you were just talking about magnetic fields, which
Hmm.
is not the same thing, but yet I feel like we're on that subject of not the usual senses that we might think of, right?
Yeah.
Not sight, which we rely on so much. She says, "Can you comment on contact and flow, surface vibrations, sound, echoes, electric
Yeah.
fields?" And the reason she's asking this question is for those of you who don't know, Nina's a new peculiar with us. She's a new member, and she also wrote a book called On Sound Mind, which I reviewed for Wall Street Journal, which is really, really neat about the sound of what it means to hear and also what it means to not hear. So take it away, Ed.
Okay, so I love this question. For anyone who hasn't read the book, Nini's referring to a sequence of chapters that form like the middle section of the book. Like all those
Hmm.
names like flow from one from to the other, and there's a reason for that. So firstly, all of these senses are part of what are called mechanical senses. So they're about sensing physical disturbances in the world around us. And
Hmm.
the way that animals do that tends to be with some kind of lever that can bend. So something that gets like something like this that gets deflected by stuff in the environment and that triggers some kind of nervous signal. And that could be like a whisker. It could be the little hair cells in our ears that allow us to hear. The fact that all of these very disparate senses rely on the same kind of the same style of sensor speaks to like a shared ancestry.
Hmm.
Like things like the electric senses of electric fish, the amazing echolocation abilities of bats. Like if you trace
Hmm.
back far enough, they do have this common beginning. Um, the other reason I like this question is that this was actually a tough part of structuring the book. You could treat all of those senses as just one bucket, like mechanosenses,
Hmm.
or you could split them up and you kind of need to split them up because the book
Here
actually
they are
needs
again.
chapters, right? But but how to split them up and how they connect to each other was actually quite hard, and it's quite hard because I think people. Sometimes I find that even people who work in this field, people who study these senses, um, didn't have like clear answers to me about like what is the difference between sensing like a vibration that moves along a surface and sound that moves through the air. Like
Hmm.
if I'm feeling like rumbles through the ground, like is that kind of hearing or is that
Right.
different? If you're a man, so manatees, for example, have whiskers all over their bodies, and they can feel the flow of water moving around to them. Is that sound? Is that
Oh,
hearing, or is it touch, or is it something completely different? And actually, the
yeah.
boundaries between all of these things were kind of porous and often like um, often I found like the folks who I talked to um, hadn't actually like had very very different answers for like how
Okay.
they should be lumped or splitted
Hmm.
or split. So trying to structure that the middle of the book and trying to find like the chapter breaks between these things was actually quite tricky. but like ultimately quite rewarding, because I think that does make you think like quite hard, like conceptually, like what are these senses like? What types of information are they tapping into? What kinds of things are they used for by animals?
That's so cool. It's your book's a little mind blowing. I think everyone said that at least once so far tonight. But it's mind blowing because nature's mind blowing, because the
Right.
brain is mind blowing, right?
Yeah.
I remembered thinking at different times, like my own sensory. I have trouble with getting overstimulated typically with senses, and so I remember reading about the manatees and being like, "Oh my god, I can't imagine feeling everything like that all the time."
Oh my God, yeah.
But we actually do. Like, I can feel air movement, and when you don't
Mhm.
feel air movement, it's actually really. I was just on an airplane traveling overseas to get food poisoning in France, like you do,
Right. Yeah.
and because I decided to eat oysters while on a mountain, which is stupid. But the weird feeling that you get when you can tell when the plane is changing stuff.
Yeah.
They don't have to tell you like, oh, we're moving up or down, or we're pressurizing, or no one has to
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
because you can tell. So it's fascinating stuff, and I love the fact that we still don't know. We're still figuring it out in a way that is I don't know, exciting to me. I'm excited that we don't have firm answers, which is, maybe some people might not like that, but for me, it's really exciting that we
I
don't
think
know
it's really
exactly.
exciting too,
Yeah.
and I think it's exciting that not only do we not have firm answers for some of these big questions, but my argument early on in the book is that we cannot get firm answers.
Hmm.
So Thomas Nagel wrote about this in his classic essay, "What Is It Like to Be a Bat?" Right? He reasoned that you can very easily imagine yourself flying through the air on leathery wings, or like biting
Hmm.
insects, whatever. But actually trying
Eating
to
into whatever.
understand, right, eating oysters on a mountaintop, you do you. But you can't understand what it is truly like to experience the
Hmm.
world through sonar in the way that a bat can. Like, that subjective world inside a bat's head is going to be forever inaccessible to you, accessible only through acts of imagination and speculation. And like, Nagel was actually remarkably prescient in choosing bats as his example, because bats, because they echolocate, are actually very, very amenable to study to technology. So most sensors are kind of passive, right? So I'm sitting here, light is coming into my eyes. I might look around, that's active, but in the main, like, I'm receiving stuff. A bat
Yeah.
has to create the signals that it then
Okay.
listens to. And so if there is no sound, there is no echo. So a bat's echolocation is active all the time. And that
Right.
means
Okay.
that bats are constantly changing the nature of the call they produce to change the kind of information they get back from the world, which means that if you record that call, you can kind of get into a bat's head. You can kind of start reading its intent. You get a sense of what information it's trying to wrest from the world around it. And that gives you an insight into what the animal is trying to do in a way that you can't really get with a lot of other creatures that
Mm.
aren't doing this kind of active sensing. And yet, you still don't know what is going on inside its head. And that kind of that chasm that permanently
Hmm.
exists in our subjective experience and another animal's is, I think, one of the most fascinating things about this
Yeah.
topic. Like,
Yeah.
the argument here is, it is worth trying to think about what they experience, even though you'll never entirely get there. There is
Right.
some like value and glory in the striving
Hmm.
of it.
Yeah. I mean, I actually feel like I understand Darwin a lot more than I probably should. That's my cat. Our cat, sorry, the peculiar mascot cat. Because I find that, when I was watching a show and they were like, "What do cats think?" And I'm watching the show going, anyone who has a cat knows the answers to most of these questions. There is something about familiarity,
Right.
even though I think we sometimes put our own. There might be a little bit of projection involved occasionally, in that. I have two questions that I think follow one another quite well. The first is Jennifer Pierce. She said, "This book was just bursting with fascinating and peculiar facts. Do you have a favorite, or was there anything you really wish you could have included in the book, but that didn't fit?" And there's another question that actually kind of follows up, which I got a good chuckle out of, because it's Rachel Lenz saying, "What is your organizational system as you're reporting this? Because when do you know when to stop?" I'm a fellow science writer, and these are my hardest questions to wrangle. So the two questions are really, did you have something you did have to leave behind? And if you did leave it behind, when do you know when it's time to leave it behind?
Yeah. So I often struggle with this question because I blank on the stuff that I left behind. I usually say that like all the best stuff is in the book, and I think that's mainly true. But there were definitely like some weird creatures that that are not in the book, that could have been in the book, and that I'm a little sad like ended up not having a place. So in the vision chapter, I really wanted to write about box jellyfish, which are a group of jellyfish mainly known for being extremely venomous, although the ones that I wanted to write about are not. They are, they're jellyfish. They're just floating bags of mostly water and like pretty flimsy tissue, but they have eyes. And they have like surprisingly good eyes. They have, I think it's like 24 eyes in 4 clusters around the rim of the bell. And they use those eyes to control their movements, to find areas that are rich in their prey. And here is an animal that has like only the vaguest hints of a nervous system, right? It's no central nervous system, and yet it has pretty decent eyes, multiple kinds of eyes, and it's using them in like quite a sophisticated way. And I think that I wrote about this in a piece on animal vision in National Geographic once, and I think it just sort of highlights that eyes can appear in like the weirdest places, in the weirdest kinds of creatures, but there was no place for it in the book because a lot of the reasons why eyes in box jellyfish are cool were already covered by a lot of the other protagonists who I wrote about, right? Like scallops have hundreds of eyes. They are surprisingly good. Here's an animal that most people think of as just like little pox of flesh on a dinner plate, and yet here they are with pretty decent vision. And then there are other creatures I wrote about with these distributed eyes, that tell you what it is like to have vision across an entire body. So that sort of gets at the second question, like how do you know when to stop? Like every story, every protagonist in the book had to have some kind of unique point to make about the sense in question. It had to reveal some new aspect of vision or touch or electroreception or whatever. And then it was just a case of trying to pick like the best possible example in each case, like the most evocative one, the one with the best history, the most interesting characters. So in terms of the organization, when I knew that I was writing the book, I just did as much research as I could to try and find as many possible stories. I had a massive database of all the animals that I could conceivably write about, all the people who worked on those animals, where those people worked, what sense they worked on. And then I just went through chapter by chapter trying to select like maybe 7 to 9 really good stories for each one, something that would highlight something really cool about that sense. And the idea was always the subtitle of the book, right? That was the North Star. It wasn't enough that to show an animal doing a cool thing. That animal doing cool thing had to defamiliarize you with the sense in question, or had to show you something new and strange about an aspect of the world that you thought you knew. And that was it. That there were a lot of cases where I could have written about an animal that has a great sense of smell, but like, what is that story going to do to transform your understanding of the world that you thought you knew? And that was always the impetus behind the book. And I knew that to more specifically answer the question of how you know how to stop, well, there's a few answers to that. Like, firstly, I have never missed a deadline in my life, and I am adamant about this. Like, I sign a book contract. I know that I have X many months to finish the book, which means that after the research can only take so many months, and then when I start writing, each chapter must take this amount of time, right? Like,
Right.
I chunk it down, and at some point I just have to stop. There's also a wonderful process in the interviewing stage when you're doing research, when you start hearing the same things again and again, when you talk to people and you're like, I knew this already. At that point, when your level of knowledge starts to hit an asymptote, you start getting a little bit more confident that you've learned like at least all the necessary fundamentals in this field, rather than just like you could forever keep on learning new details. But when you feel like you actually understand conceptually what is going on, I think that's the point when you start thinking, I'm nearly there.
Yeah. That I was just popping up a few comments that were not necessarily questions, but that were good ones. One of the things that a lot of people are talking about is how useful the footnotes were, and they were. One of the things I'm hearing as you're talking about your structure is I didn't hear you talk about the part of writing a book where you lie on the floor and cry. Do you not do that? I do that always for like a couple of months, like
Right.
at the start.
Yeah.
I'm on my 5th book, and there's like the lying on the floor and crying part. And then I'm writing a really difficult to structure book right now myself, and it's because there's too much and not enough of everything. Like everything is too much and not enough. And I find, like you, there's a point at which usually about halfway through the book, I go, oh, that's what I'm doing. And then from that point on, I find I have a structure that kind of works. But it always takes me like 40,000 words before I know what that is, which seems really inefficient, frankly. But but I also write of course, I'm also a journalist and I write to deadlines. And so, the lying on the floor and crying part is, I think integral, right? Really.
Right. Absolutely. Part of the process.
I'm listening to Ed calmly describe his writing process, and I'm thinking of the texts that I've gotten from Brandy like over the last few weeks. Going,
yeah,
to each their own.
Well, I will say 2 things about this. So firstly, An Immense World was an absolute gift in terms of structure, because it was very clear from the start, each chapter was going to be a different sense, full stop. There was no other way of doing it. And that's just a gimme, right? But when you don't have to figure out how to group in ideas into chapters, like you're so much of the way there. This was more about like which specific senses are going to be chapters and what order should they be. But like I mean, this is Randy's going to hate me for this, but like for both of the books that I've written so far, I had 2 like pacts for myself at the start, which were, you are going to finish this on time, and you are going to not complain about this. And I stuck to that like quite intensely. And I feel like setting that intention early on was really important, because it is very easy to slip into this mindset of like, I am the tortured writer. I am like bent over my keyboard at 1 a.m. and I'm crying, and like, for sure,
no, I definitely don't
writing
do
a book is hard. For sure, writing a book
no,
is very hard.
I sleep. Sleeping is very important. Nina Kraus wondered if you storyboard. I don't know if that's something you do.
I outline very extensively. It's more of a very, very long, tiered, bullet-pointed Word document. And if I get really stuck, then I go to index cards and start like shuffling stuff around a big dining table.
I have done the index card method, but I actually I do a lot of my writing longhand. I also write fiction, and I like sometimes write whole drafts longhand, which you then have to type, which is annoying. Right, because my writing is not that clear to read. But I don't really storyboard. I will say I do have a process. And I do also start with a pact. My pact is that it's not that I won't complain, it's that I will turn complaining into an art form that will also be funny.
Yeah.
Right. To each his own. But no, I love hearing about practice. This is one of the questions we ask all the time. Davey knows. This is one of the questions we ask all the time of our authors is how they write. Because I'm a writer, so as a host, I'm all like, I need to know how this happened.
Yeah.
Because I find like every time I start a book, I'm like, how are books written? Well, this is your 5th book, Brandy. I'm like, I know. How are they done? I don't remember. So it's good to get people's practice and structure. It's just fascinating to hear about. I do notice that we are at the midpoint of the show, however, which means we all get a little musical break. Following that, there's a series of questions that have come up, which I have. The reason I haven't asked them yet is because I feel like they're kind of related, and I also think that they work well in the second half of the show. So we're going to come to those after our musical break. There's also, well, there's a PSA kind of about the Avengers that we need to hear from Davy, and there will also be the author quiz. So there's many of these things that are coming along and being fun and groovy. So Davy, musical time.
Oh, hello, Peculiars.
We're Charming Disaster.
And we're so glad to be here on the Peculiar Book Club once again. In 1891, a young Maria Sklodowska left her native Poland to study science in Paris. Something she could not do in Poland, which was at the time under Russian rule, which prohibited women from pursuing higher education. She was not looking for love. She was not seeking romance. She was certainly not hunting for a husband. But then she met Pierre Curie, a scientist as devoted to his research as she was to her own, a dreamer with beautiful eyes. He courted her with research papers. And ultimately, they shared a laboratory and a life together. And when they got married, they took their honeymoon on bicycles in the French countryside.
Must be a beautiful thing that I dare not conceive, to be hypnotized by our dreams. We work side by side, we would have all we need.
Ride our bicycles down to the sea, the sun and the sand and the breeze. We could set out a blanket and read, together consider the great mysteries. Let us explore the forces of nature, making a light in the dark. Stay with me for the rest of our days. Nothing will tear us apart. Come with me across the way. Finally, our very own space. We will while the hours away. Walk home to eat at the end of the day.
Catch a brief glimpse of your face, to carefully measure and weigh your beauty as you concentrate. Reminds me that this is our natural state. Let us explore the forces of nature, making a light in the dark. Stay
that no others could find.
Fear is just a design, a scribble of chalk in our minds. But now we have brought it to life, a shining bright future for all humankind.
Eat, drink,
Let's
sleep,
explore
be idle
forces
love
of
and touch.
nature,
The sweetest
making the
things
light
from
in the
life but not succumb.
Stay
drink,
with me
sleep,
for
be
rest of our
idle
days, dear.
The sweetest
Think we'll
things
tear
of
us apart.
life but not succumb.
Let us explore the forces of nature, making a light in the dark. Stay with me for the rest of our days, dear. Nothing will tear us apart.
So forces of nature, just for you. This is Darwin. I trust Darwin's senses often, frequently better than I trust my own. He hissed at a neighbor's kid, and I don't trust them anymore. So, you know, I'm like now deeply suspicious of a child.
That's right.
So yes, he likes to make an appearance.
Hi, Darwin.
He's tired. He's actually he's fine. Want to go take a nap? Anyway, that's our cat. So, oh no, are you okay? Did I do that? Oh my God, I've caused Ed Young to choke.
I'm fine.
It's terrible. He was fine till he went on Brandy's show. What happened there? Anyway, you're good.
Watch Area Man forget how to swallow on live live broadcast. I'm fine.
No, it's good. Great.
Yeah.
You missed it. When messes like Brandy broke that.
I think Darwin broke Ed. Something about that cat just annihilated.
Well, you saw the clip. We almost killed Ed. I know everybody's like, oh no. That's Charming Disaster, by the way. Charming Disaster is our house band. They are a band in their own right. We didn't make them. They way pre-existed us, but they're a fantastic band and love them very much. They just launched a new album which is called Supernatural History, which has got a lot of like there's a song about manta rays, for instance. I think you'd like it. Yeah, it's good. I like that whole choking experience totally threw off what I was Davey, what was
animals,
I doing?
Something senses.
Something animals.
Something about
senses,
questions all coming together.
questions.
By the way, you'll notice
Questions,
my
yeah.
door's open. Kenobi has joined me in
Oh,
my
Kenobi!
office. So
Hello, Kenobi.
he's my dog. So all the peculiar animals have joined us for the broadcast.
So
now.
I make the miniatures for the claymation intros. Like I do the stop
Very
motion
good.
animation for that, and I now have a small Kenobi as well. So just so y'all know, in the future, Kenobi will be taking part in the miniature miniaturization of everything. So I know what I was going to say. Is that we were worried. You know, the world is a big place, and we want to protect it. And one of the things that I really got out of your book is that this big, beautiful world needs our protection, and we have to safeguard the environment. And we thought that one way we could safeguard the environment was maybe by hiring our own kind of Avengers group. So
Right.
we thought we would present this security video to you, Ed, and see what you think.
Ladies and gentlemen of the World Security Council, as you know, the Avengers have left the planet, leaving Earth defenseless. Well, I would like to propose a new team, a peculiar Avengers, to step in and defend this planet from threats. Meet my team. First, Mantis Shrimp. He might be tiny at only 10 centimeters, but there is no one better at close quarters combat than this little stomatopod. They will smash their prey with a heavy blow from their mineralized club-like appendage. In a scrap, there is no one I would rather have fighting beside me. Next, every team needs a spy. And who better than the star-nosed mole? With more than 25,000 sensory receptors in its touch organ, it can feel its way into an enemy compound and even detect seismic wave vibrations. Crucial for Earth's defense is sensing what's coming. And if it's something hot, on fire, you're gonna want a fire-chasing beetle on the team. With 70 infrared sensilla, they can be alerted from miles away. Every great superhero team has someone who can control their enemies' minds. And the most talented hero on the planet for that is the Emerald Jewel Wasp. With precise stings into its enemy's ganglia, our enemy's best agents will fall under our control. If our enemies take to the skies, we will be ready with our crab spider. Using their silk webs to balloon out and grab onto electric fields, they can chase enemies across the planet. Finally, if we can't beat our enemies, we'll entrance them with the seductive song of the Tugera frog. We'll find the frog with the most complex mating call to bring our enemies to their knees. Ladies and gentlemen, they may be peculiar, but these are Earth's real mightiest heroes, and the team you need to protect the planet.
Amazing. I died at the frog.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a
Like,
little bit
this
of
is
fun
so
with
nerdy and humans pale by comparison. The bad thing is when I laugh, my face turns bright red. Do you remember the show we did about Philadelphia? I just was like
Yeah.
a beacon.
I just, as I was listening to it, every time you and I came up with this idea like a third of the way into the book, so I know there were animals probably in that first third of the book that I meant to put in there and didn't start my list and didn't start writing them down.
I just love the idea that the animals just get progressively less superheroic as the video goes on. I mean, the mandarin bears are the hardest punch in the natural world. That's a pretty good choice.
Yeah,
the
he's our Captain America is like
right there. is just a very normal frog, and like, it just happens to have like a weird mating call. That's brilliant. I love
okay.
it.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay. We loved everything.
Yeah, fantastic. Good work.
I love this show. All right. I like this show. It's my show, and I love this. Right. So, anyway, now to get serious. We had some. There's no decent segue into the next thing that I plan to say. Thanks, Davey. Bats. Why was there not a bat? That's what I want to know. Why wasn't there a bat on the Avengers?
Yeah, I was trying to find also the most peculiar skills of all the creatures you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm gonna do a lighthearted question here because I need to like warm up to the more questions I've got to show. This is from Kristen. She said the book made me a bit sad that I didn't adopt an elephant fish when I had the chance. Was there an animal that you really fell in love with while researching?
Ooh, it's a good question. So I really loved the tree hoppers. Tree hoppers and leaf hoppers. So they feature in the chapter on vibrations. They're a group of small insects. Most people have not heard of them. They're very common if you've been in any green space, a park, a garden. You probably have been next to a tree hopper or a leaf hopper before. They sit on plants and they vibrate their abdomens and they send these vibrational signals coursing along the leaves and the stems of the plants on which they sit. And other leaf hoppers and tree hoppers sitting on the plants can pick these up. And these are not traditional sounds, right? They also look incredibly weird. They're very cool looking, but it's not the aesthetics that I'm writing about in the book. So these signals are not traditional sounds. You can't hear them with your unassisted ears, but you can take a little clip-on microphone and attach it to a plant and convert these signals into audible sounds. And when you do that, you hear what are completely unlike anything that you would expect an insect to sound like. Not like simple cricket-like chirps, but these beautiful, weird, haunting, often melodic sounds that sound more like birds or musical instruments or sometimes machinery. And this was, I think, just a beautiful example of the concept of the book. Like the idea that the green spaces around us could be full of these these hidden choruses, these beautiful songs, these messages that we are completely oblivious to, is wonderful to me. It makes me think about a garden or a park in a very different way.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I've seen leafhoppers because if you lie on the grass, eventually one of them will hop on you.
Right. Yeah.
And as a kid, I was like, "What is that?" It looks like it would make a great design for like a motorcycle or something, like a kind of cool aerodynamic. I've got a whole superhero thing going on in my head now, but so some of the last questions I have to ask you are going to take us a little bit out of the book to talk more broadly about the world as we know it post-pandemic. So one of the things Leanne points out is that you refer to the time of COVID as the I don't know if I can say this right, pandemicene.
Pandemicene, yeah.
And first of all, did you coin that term? Because if you did, it's a beautiful term. It works really well.
I think I don't want to claim precedence. I'm sure that other people have used the term before, but not to my knowledge. So when I wrote that piece, I came up with the term as it exists in the piece. Was I the first person to use it? I don't know. Someone's a historian. But yeah, I wanted to use the term to signify that we have done something different to the world in a way that radically changes our risk of disease. It's not quite the same as the Anthropocene. It doesn't have the same kind of geological significance, but I wanted to have a memorable term that marked a change, like that cued people in that we are living in a different era than the one that we might be familiar with.
Right. And following that was Rachel Lenz had a question. She said, you took time out of writing this book to do sudden emergency research and reporting on the pandemic. So now a lot of people primarily know you as a health reporter. Sure. And she wondered how that made you feel. And this is a question that I have too, because of course I knew you as a science writer before the pandemic. But when I mention you to people, a lot of people are like, "Oh, right. So the guy who writes about COVID." And I'm like,
right.
Well, yes. But I wonder about that myself because, I am in the process of writing a book about attacks on trans lives. And I find already I am being talked to. I was in quote, I'm now interviewed in pieces for Spectrum and, the Wall Street Journal and Washington Post, where I'm now like the person who knows about trans issues. And it's a strange thing to do important work, but yet it's not actually it's not your oeuvre, it's not your, even maybe your goal. So I'm just as curious as Rachel is, how does that make you feel?
Yeah, I actually wondered, I wondered when I was writing the book whether people who were familiar with my COVID reporting would buy a book about the way animals sense the world. I actually suspected that like whatever status or attention I gained through pandemic work wouldn't actually translate to the book at all. Now, whether it actually did or not, I don't really know. The book did really well. Yeah, whether that was partly because of being more widely known because of pandemic reporting, I don't know. But a few things on it, like I've written about many, many things in my career, and I am happy being a a pandemic reporter and being a reporter who writes about weird nature. Like I contain multitudes. I have been a microbe guy before. Like I am very widespread in my interests, and I'm not uncomfortable being associated with lots and lots of different beats, because that actually is where my predilections lie. But I also think that there is an interesting connective tissue running through all of that work, even though they may seem to be, it may seem to be about radically different topics. And I think that tissue is about revealing hidden aspects of the world that are incredibly important and often overlooked. I Contain Multitudes was about the microbes that influence our lives. Obviously very small. We are unaware of their presence except when they make us sick. An Immense World is about the sensory information that we cannot tap into, but that other animals can. Most of my pandemic work is about the hidden systems and social forces in our world that make us incredibly vulnerable to new pathogens, as well as the pathogens themselves, which are also invisible and hard to perceive. So there's always this idea that the world is richer and more interesting and deeper than we give it credit for, and that we need to know about that to either appreciate it more deeply or to understand ways in which we could improve the societies in which we live. And also, besides that, there is a running theme of curiosity and of empathy. Like, these are the two like pillar values behind An Immense World. It's a book about it's a book where I tried to get people on every page to go, about creatures that are very different to them, and to try and step into their shoes. A lot of the pandemic reporting that has meant the most to me has been about trying to tell the stories of groups who've been left behind by our pandemic response and our attitudes. Healthcare workers, long haulers, immunocompromised people. Those stories are fundamentally too about curiosity and empathy. So, I think the topics might be incredibly different. Obviously, the pandemic work is often very depressing and sad and grim. The animal work is about the animal work is about awe and wonder, and it should be uplifting and fascinating. But I think the values that underlie them are actually the same, and there is like a surprising amount of continuity there.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I'm working I'm working on a book on how people attacked trans people during the Nazi period, in the middle of a time when people are attacking trans people. And so, in terms of it being incredibly depressing, a book like this one was just a joy to read, just a joy to read. And I was a little jealous. I was like, I would write this. I want to spend time with mantis shrimp, that seems like a good job. I would like that. I didn't think you should do that.
I think for exactly that reason, the book was a bit of a lifeline to me. I wrote the first half of it before COVID happened. I stopped my book leave briefly between March and December of 2020 to cover the pandemic. I then went back on book leave for 4 months to finish the book, and that was to write about joyful things was really necessary. I often joke that it tells you what pandemic reporting is like, that writing half a book in 4 months felt like going to a spa. It was a deeply restorative act for my mental health, which is, even for me, not the experience of writing.
I have 4 months to write the second half of my book, so I sure hope it feels like a spa.
Yeah, it's gonna be that way for sure. I'm confident.
It's gonna be great. Well, we are now at the point, and this is possibly our most famous feature of this show, actually, is the Davy quiz. It's the author quiz. And don't worry, you have a lifeline, because you can ask the peculiars and they can help you out.
All right. Well, you can clearly see I'm on a superhero kick here. And what was I going to ask Ed, right? What was I going to ask you about any of these animals that you didn't already know? I don't think that had been much of a challenge. And I tried not to make it as challenging as last week, because last week I went
last week was very
too hard. But I'm sticking on the superheroes because a lot of superheroes, tap into their senses, and a lot of them have, super senses, we'll say. So the quiz we're doing this week is called the Superheroes of Sense. So I'm going to ask you about 3 different superheroes here.
It's it's Heartbeat.
Although he is blind, Daredevil's other senses are heightened. The superhuman levels allowing him to develop a radar sense, echolocate, and even hear an enemy's heartbeat. Ed is correct.
Because one of my other hats, besides writing about pandemics and animals, is I read a lot of comic books.
Perfect. We're right in Ed's lane. Okay.
Ed, can I just say, you now have to be a peculiar for the rest of your days, because once you get on the show, we never leave you alone ever. We will just follow you forever. You are forever part of our family. But don't worry, you belong here.
Amazing.
I can tell.
You know, frankly, it's probably all of the above. I'm guessing Daredevil probably would hear you breathing and hear if you
For
had
sure.
tummy gurgles, if you had an upset stomach, he would hear you coming.
He can do all that. Yeah.
If he ate an oyster on a mountain in France, he'd know.
All right, moving on to DC Comics, the Flashes, specifically Barry Allen's powers, are incredibly complex, but by tapping into the Speed Force, he can move at incredible speeds, throw Speed Force lightning from his hands, travel to multiple dimensions, and can even phase through objects by sensing what? Is he sensing A, the vibrations of an object, B, the density of an object, or C, the viscosity of an object?
I think it's A. I think it's vibrations.
He's going
Okay, is
A.
it A?
See,
Anybody else?
I heard a think in there, Peculiars.
Lexi's like, I don't need Ed don't need us.
You can still play along, Peculiars. I'll wait for your answers to come in.
Lexi's like, hey, people are like, what did Ed say? I'll take that one. That sounds good.
They are on Team Ed tonight. All right, the answer is yes, it is A, the vibrations of an object, which also helps him travel to different Earths because that is a barrier that he has to figure out how to solve. A problem he has to solve. When he gets to Earth 2, he can't figure out why he feels so terrible there. And it's the vibrations. All right. I'm moving slightly off of comic book superheroes, and I'm moving into a superhero from my realm, the Jedi. I think we can all agree that the Jedi are basically superheroes.
I love the fact that Davey has just claimed Star Wars as his realm. He has a dog named Kenobi, by the way. He is our only hope.
Yeah.
I could talk hours and hours and hours on Star Wars.
It's B, by the way.
Including using Force sense to feel things across the galaxy, which led to this iconic line from Obi-Wan Kenobi. I felt the great tragedy in the Force. I felt the great disturbance in the Force. All right, you got me. It's that's my superhero quiz, Ed. I don't think there was anything I was going to stump you on there either.
No.
I love that. I mean, I feel incredibly validated. I can now go into.
Sadie says the Gen X folk all answered it. We were all answering in unison. We're all like,
right.
Appropriate after May the 4th.
That's true. That's true.
I laughed a lot during this episode.
Someone asked, was there a question about baby animals? Oh, yes.
Oh, there was, yes.
Leanne,
there it is.
We clicked it at the same time. Go for it.
We clicked it at the same time. Sorry. Everyone loves animals, but do you have any ideas on why we tend to be fascinated and moved emotionally by photos of baby animals? I did totally have like baby animals on speed dial through the entire pandemic.
Oh, it's because like baby animals have features that like tap into our innate like empathy for baby humans, right? So I
don't like baby humans.
That's totally fair, but
you picked the one person, the one person.
Right. No, I get it, but like baby animals tend to have like large eyes, large heads relative to their bodies. Like these are features that we deem cute because it makes perfect sense for people to be to be strongly drawn to the babies of their own species. They're more likely to then care for them and look after them and so on. But I think what's interesting is when you get creatures that like tap into those same instincts, like that trigger those same instincts that would not traditionally be thought of as cute. Like a lot of people find jumping spiders cute because they have large eyes and have like disproportionately large heads relative to their bodies.
That's the secret. All right.
I think jumping spiders are cuter than human babies. I just want to say that. Maybe I'm in a minority, but
the Star Wars comic book industry, right? The Disney knows this because look at the top selling toys were Baby Yoda, and then before him it was Baby Groot. So
that's true. That's true.
They know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, Sadie Simmons says, we have 5 baby birds in a nest and their gaping maws make it hard to be, but their tiny chirps are adorable. True. Okay, fair. You know what I think too, though? I do think that we have kind of a fixation on eyes, don't we? I mean, that's kind of a human thing, isn't it? So you say this in the book, that's one of the reasons why why we're weirded out by things like scallops that we want to eat that have really good vision. We're like, wait, I don't want that to be a thing.
Right. I think we often associate eyes with intelligence. The idea that something's looking at you, it makes it easier to imagine some kind of agency, some kind of subjective world behind those eyes. You're less likely to do that if something with no eyes is like smelling you or just listening to you. I think there's something about vision that evokes that very primal sense of like to something which eyes is by definition watching you, and I think we tend to equate that with intelligence. One of the points I make in the book is that we also specifically associate the act of gazing with intelligence because we have two eyes that face forward. And so if we want to pay attention to things, we have to look around. And so we equate an active gaze with an active intellect, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. Like if you have eyes on the side of your head, you can pay attention to lots of things around you without having to look around. And because of that, we tend to associate animals that we don't look around with being a bit dumb. But I think that's a consequence of projecting our own unbelt onto theirs. And similarly, like, we talked about jumping spiders, right? Like the fact that jumping spiders tend to have two main eyes in the front of their head. They have lots of eyes, but the two main ones that do sharp color vision facing forwards, just like ours. And so a jumping spider will turn and look at things that are around it. Like it'll see it. If a jumping spider is like facing this way forward, and I like click behind it, the eyes behind it will register that, but it will then turn to face me, which makes it seem smarter because of the association we have between that kind of movement and intelligence.
Yeah, because I think like for me, it's something about the eyes, because I feel like, okay, think about Baby Yoda. Take away the eyes. Not cute anymore, is it? I mean, there's something kind of like, right? It's just a little, it's like that weird creature in Pan's Labyrinth or whatever. It's a horror movie anyway, that gave me terrible nightmares. So I think that there's something about we project, and that projection is also what we love. So maybe loving animals is a kind of self-love, and maybe loving baby animals is like us loving the best in ourselves. I'm going to just say that we're just going to pretend that that's true. I know we're running out of time, and I wanted to ask you a couple questions, Ed, just for everyone here. I know you have been kind of away on sabbatical and you've just moved and all this stuff. What is the best way for people to connect with you now? Because I know Twitter is on fire. Do you have a newsletter? Do you have an assistant person that people contact you through? Like, what's the best way for folks to reach Ed?
So honestly, at the moment, I'm not sure there is a way. There is a newsletter. I do update it when I have new. Right, that's right. You can send good vibes. But yeah, I am currently reevaluating my relationship with social media. So we'll see what happens. It's not Twitter. There is a newsletter where I will like update about new pieces at the Atlantic or like any big new projects that I'm working on. I use it very sporadically, and it's because of the way Tiny Letter works. It's not a two-way street. It's just me like saying, "Hey, new thing." Right. But yeah, I think part of sabbatical was trying to work out what I want my experience of social media to be. And currently what I want it to be is non-existent. No,
but you know what? It's interesting because I'm struggling. I love Twitter because I believe that my autistic brain functions in 120 characters at high speed. Like I really like that format. And I'm up there all the time and I have lots of followers, but it's not it's a very unsafe place for somebody who is me writing about, trans issues and stuff. And while I can deal with a lot of that, and it's whatever, people are stupid, it's still frustrating. So I've taken to Substack because Substack has a place where, I don't know if you guys know this. Oh yeah, this is part of the announcements. You can actually write me on Substack. Like there's little notes you can send me through Substack if you follow my Substack. So it's a little bit like having Twitter within a newsletter, which I kind of like. But I haven't really used it very much yet. So I'll go back to pen pals. That actually is a great idea, Anthro Girl. I kind of like it. So yeah, I'm still trying to work that out too, and it is frustrating. But thank you for letting us know about the newsletter. obviously we'll follow you up there. And thank you for giving us your time, because you're awesome, and I really feel that you are definitely one of us. You seem just peculiar enough for our group. I mean, you almost died because of my cat. I feel like you're
I
in
did, right?
forever. It's like it has been wonderful to have you. It's been wonderful to have all of you. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube and you missed it live, thank you for coming to YouTube. Thank you for joining. Please subscribe. We love you. You're awesome. Thank you to the VIPs, because you make this show possible. You are awesome as well. Davey's awesome. We all awesome. Just saying.
Thank you
Thank
so
you for
much
joining
having
us
me.
at a place where, if you're weird, you're family.
You got the blue bottle blues when you wake up in the night. Don't make a big mistake, 'cause you can never make it right. When you reach out for the vial, feel the ridges in the glass. It's a matter of survival, baby, better watch your back. There is no antidote. There is no antidote. There is no